In my previous lecture, I talked about the respiratory system. So now I'll move ahead to another system, which is called the circulatory system. So there are two different kind of systems, open and the closed circulatory system. So let's see what these two different kind of systems are. So if we talk about the lower organisms like protist, so in those organisms, oxygen and nutrients, they are obtained directly from the aqueous environment. As these organisms are simple cellular organisms. Most of the cells, they are in direct contact with the external environment. Hence, they can directly absorb gases, gases exchange could take place, and also they can directly absorb nutrients. So the body wall in most of these cases is only two cell layer thick in the organisms which belong to the category of cnidarians such as hydra, flatworms, and planaria. However, in larger animals, the tissues are several layers thick. Let's say, for example, vertebrates. So there, the cells are hiding at the deeper places. So in order for those cells to receive nutrition or exchange of gases, there is a requirement of a circulatory system. So oxygen and nutrients, they are transported from the environment and the digestive system or the digestive cavity of the body of the organism within this circulatory system. So this is a example of planaria, gastrovascular cavity. So you can see this is the gastrovascular cavity, and here we have the mouth and the pharynx. So this is a simple cellular organism where the requirement of the circulatory system is limited. Now, what is the open circulatory system? So, in an open circulatory system, there is no distinction between the circulatory fluid, that is most of the time it's blood, and the extracellular fluid of the body tissues. So, we call it interstitial fluid or the lymph. So, in this particular case, open circulatory, we call it a hemolymph, as this is a combination of both. So in most of the insects, the heart is a muscular tube that pump hemolymph through a network of channel and cavities in the body. The fluid then drains back to the central cavity. So this is a typical figure of insects where you can see this is a tubular heart which is pumping around the whole insect body, and from there again back it is coming to the heart. And similar kind of can be seen in the earthworm as well. However, in the closed circulatory system, the fluid or the blood vessel is always inside the blood is always inside a vessel, and the transport takes place by those vessels. So in a typical example, in the earthworm, you can see there are different kind of blood vessels where the blood is being moved from one place to another, and it is brought to the lateral parts. So the functions of the vertebrate circulatory system. So the vertebrate circulatory system is more elaborate than the invertebrate circulatory system. In the invertebrates, there is open kind of circulatory system. In the invertebrates, usually the lymph or the interstitial fluid is in direct contact with the external environment, so the gases exchange can easily take place. In case of vertebrates, we have a closed system. The respiratory system is responsive for the gaseous uptake, or in general the gaseous exchange. From there, the circulatory system, which is in direct contact with the respiratory system, it absorbs the gases and facilitate the gaseous exchange. So there are blood vessels called arteries. that carry blood away from the heart, and there are veins that return blood to the heart. The heart is the central pumping organ in the vertebrates. The fluid derived from plasma that passes out of capillary walls into the surrounding tissue is called the interstitial fluid. As the blood is continuously moving into the blood vessels. So at some places, especially at the interstitial spaces, the plasma can ooze out of the blood vessels and get collected in the interstitial spaces. That is what we call as the interstitial fluid. Some of this fluid returns to the capillaries and some enters into lymph vessels. So in order to maintain the blood pressure or the normal levels of the blood, some of it is returned back and some enters the lymph vessels, although they also facilitate in returning it back. So now there are a couple of functions of the circulatory system. So number one is the transportation. So all of the substances, they are which are essential for the cellular metabolism. They are being transported by the circulatory system. The example could be respiratory, nutritive, and the excretory. So let's say, for example, a respiratory, the oxygen is being taken up from the lungs, from the alveoli, and is transported to the different tissues, places, to the different cells. And from there, CO2 is collected and brought back to the lungs. Nutritive is that when the digestion of food is taking place, the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine, and from that small intestine, now it is being distributed to the different cells, different tissues, where the different oxidative reactions are taking place. Excretory in the sense that kidneys, they are kind of doing the cleaning process. They are involved in the removal of waste products. So the blood is transporting different kind of metabolic waste generated at the tissue sites to the kidneys, where the urine formation or the removal of the waste products takes place. Second one is the regulation. The cardiovascular system transport regulatory hormones and participate in the temperature regulation. So as all of us know that we have endocrine glands. So they secrete their hormones at one place. That hormones are being transported by the circulatory system to their site of action. Also, they are involved in the regulation of temperature. Let's say, for instance, if somebody is in a cold environment, so the extremities, let's say hands and the feet, they start feeling cold. So now the circulatory system tries to pump more and more blood to those extremities so that they become warm. Next one is the protection. The circulatory system protect against injury and foreign microbes or toxins introduced into the body. So one of the process is the blood clotting. So whenever there is a tissue damage, the process of blood clotting takes place. So that blood clotting not only prevents the loss of blood, but also helps in the repair of that particular tissue. Also, we have immune defense system. So this immune defense system comprises of different kind of cell components. Different kind of antibodies are being generated, which are in the blood. Okay, so the blood is composed of fluid, plasma, and several different kind of cells that circulate within that fluid. So there are a couple of cells which are present in the blood. So let's see what are the different kind of cells. So first of all, we have this erythrocyte cell. So this is look like a concave disc. You can imagine a simple balloon is taken and you can just press that balloon from the inside. So what you see is that the exterior is a little bit bulging tubular-like structure, and the inner one is the thinner one. So the lifespan of erythrocyte or red blood cell is 120 days. It is doing the job of transport of gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide. Then we have neutrophils. Its lifetime is 7 hours. So this is responsible for the immune defenses. Then we have eosinophils. So usually its lifespan is unknown. So this is also involved in the defense against different kind of parasites. Then we have basophils. So its lifespan is also unknown, and this is involved in the inflammatory response. Then we have monocytes. Its lifespan is 3 days. It is involved in the immune surveillance. It is kind of precursor of tissue macrophage. Then we have B lymphocytes. So its lifespan is also unknown. This is responsible for antibody production and is kind of precursor of plasma cells. Then we have next one is T lymphocyte. Its lifespan is also unknown. This is responsible cellular immune response. Then ultimately we have the platelets. So these platelets are nothing but the remnants or the leftover of cells. So this lifespan is 7 to 8 days. And these platelets are responsible for the blood clotting. So plasma contains a lot of dissolved solutes, ions, minerals. So let's see what are different kind of solutes which are present in the plasma. So in plasma, we have metabolites, waste, and hormones. So these molecules or metabolites, they are dissolved within the plasma, and are all of the metabolites, they are used by the cells. So we can have metabolites such as glucose, amino acids, and vitamins. So when the digestion is taking place, these metabolites are absorbed by the circulatory system and they are into the plasma. Now from there it is transported to the different sites or different tissues. So there these molecules are utilized for energy production or overall maintenance of the cells. Now they generate waste products from that, and these waste products are also part of the plasma. And similarly, different kind of hormones, they could be secreted by the endocrine glands and are transported to their site of action by the circulatory system. Then second point is the ions. So different kind of ions like sodium, chloride, and bicarbonate ions, they are also present in the blood. So these ions are having different kind of functions. Let's say for example, sodium is responsible for the maintenance of blood pressure. Also bicarbonate ions, they are responsible for the maintenance of the pH. Then the third one is the proteins. So liver produces most of the plasma proteins, including albumins, and these are kind of transported or carried by the blood plasma, as well as hormones, fibrinogen, they are also transported. So this fibrinogen, which is a major constituent of blood clotting, is also present in the plasma. So the blood cells. So erythrocytes, they help in the oxygen transport. So if we talk about the number of cells, then 1 cubic millimeter of blood contains about 5 million red blood cells. So the fraction of the blood or the total blood that is occupied by the erythrocytes or RBCs is called the hematocrit. So it is typically about 45%. In vertebrates, hemoglobin is found only in erythrocytes. So then we have this leukocytes. So leukocytes, they defend the body. So less than 1% of the cells in human blood are leukocytes, or in simple terms we call white blood cells, or WBC. So there are only 1 or 2 leukocytes every 1000 erythrocytes. So you can see there's a huge difference between the number of cells. So leukocytes, they are usually larger than erythrocytes and have nuclei. There are several kind of leukocytes, each of which plays a specific role in defending the body against invading microorganisms and other foreign substances. So as I showed you in the table where I showed different kind of cells, so different kind of leukocytes are there. So platelets, which are kind of remnants of the cells, they play an important role in blood clotting. So there is a mechanism, or there is a stepwise process of blood clot formation. So what is that? So let's say this is a blood vessel. So when this vessel is damaged, let's say by some sharp object being in contact with this blood vessel, or it is being ruptured. So this leads to the exposure of inner tissues to the blood. Also the collagen fibers which are making the blood vessels are exposed to outside. So that leads to the formation of a platelet plug. So platelet kind adheres to this particular site, and this becomes sticky, forming a plug. Second, now there takes place a cascade of reactions where the platelets trigger different kind of clotting factors that are responsible for the repair of the damaged tissue. So some of them is prothrombin. It gets converted to thrombin, and this thrombin leads to the conversion of fibrinogen to fibrin. And this fibrin is a fine fiber which forms a mesh-like structure at the site of damage. In that mesh-like structure, the erythrocytes or the RBCs, they get entangled, and immediately the blood loss stops. You might have noticed that when there is any kind of minor scratch or there is a minor injury, you'll see that after a few minutes, or I would say in a couple of minutes, you'll see that a white liquid kind of thing oozes out of that particular site. So it's only the plasma part that oozes out, and the RBCs, they cannot cross that particular structure of fibrin. So they are entangled between the fibrin threads. So at some other point, we'll see what are the different kind of factors which are involved. But for the time being, you just need to remember that prothrombin is converted to thrombin, and this thrombin converts fibrinogen into fibrin. And this fibrin forms a mesh-like structure. There are a lot of other clotting factors which are involved, but this is kind of beyond this scope. Okay, so let's see the characteristic of the blood vessels. So different kind of blood vessels like arteries, arterioles, veins, and venules, they all have a similar kind of basic structure. So almost you can see a typical example here. This is artery, this is a vein, and this is this is artery, this is a vein, and this is what we have a capillary. So almost all three have a inner structure of endothelial cells. In case of capillary, the endothelial cells are the only ones. Whereas in case of arteries and the capillaries, we see there is a elastic layer. This is surrounded by a smooth muscle, which is later surrounded by a connective tissue. Now, this kind of structure is required to provide the flexibility as these smooth muscles. So that will lead to contraction and relaxation and also to prevent the minor injuries. Now, these capillaries, they are deeply embedded into the tissues. So there, the exchange of molecules or exchange of gases and different kind of metabolites are required. So they are only one or two cell layer thick. So the walls of the capillaries, they are only made up of endothelium, so that molecules and ions, they can easily leave these capillaries via simple process of diffusion or maybe filtration. However, in case of arteries and the veins, the blood vessel is thick so that they can just transport from one point to another. No exchange takes place via these vessels. Okay, so there is a vast tree of arteries. They present a frictional resistance to blood flow. So now if we say that the blood is flowing through the blood vessels. So what does it mean? That it is a tubular kind of structure where the blood is flowing. So if we say that the flow needs to be more, it means the diameter of the blood vessels has to be more. So at this particular point, we can talk of two different uh, points which are responsible for the flow, and that is responsible for providing the resistance. So number one is the size or the diameter of the blood vessel. Another one is the thickness of the blood. So all of these, they provide the resistance or flow. Let's say, for example, if the blood vessel is narrow, the flow will be less. If the blood vessel is wider, the flow will be more. Also, if the thickness of the blood is more, the flow will be less. There will be more resistance. And if the thickness is less, it will easily flow. So in a way, we can say that the narrower vessels, they provide more friction. So there are a couple of instances where the vasoconstriction would lead. So what is that vasoconstriction? Is nothing but the contraction of the smooth muscle layer present on the blood vessel. So when the vasoconstriction or the decrease in the lumen of that blood vessel takes place, then there will be lesser space for the blood to flow. So it will increase the resistance and it will decrease the blood flow. Now, there could be instances where there will be vasodilation. So in vasodilation, what will happen is that the diameter of the blood vessel will increase. The smooth muscles which are onto the surface of the blood vessel, they'll relax, leading to the increase in the diameter of the blood vessel. So now, because of the increase, there will be decrease in the resistance and there will be increase in the blood flow. So let's see, there's a typical example here. So what we see is that there is a arteriole here and this is a venule here. So between this arteriole and the venule, there is a fine network of capillaries. And to these capillaries, we have this pre-capillary sphincters. So here, when there are normal conditions, so in that normal conditions, these pre-capillary sphincters, they are open. Normal condition is the blood flow is normal. So at this particular time, these pre-capillary sphincters, they are open. Blood enters the capillaries, and there it is responsible for the gaseous exchange. So the tissues where these capillaries are there, those tissues, they're gonna absorb oxygen and they'll release carbon dioxide. So via this fine network of capillaries, we'll see there's a transition in the oxygenation to the deoxygenated. Now this deoxygenated blood is taken up by the venules. So however, if these pre-capillary sphincters, they are closed, it can directly flow through the small arterioles to the venules. So here, although the absorption of, or you can say the gaseous exchange could be less, but still, some part of oxygen could be taken up and CO2 could be given up by the tissues. So this exchange in the capillaries. So every cell in the body is about 100 micron of a capillary. So that is a kind of little bit of distance. So on an average, capillaries, they are about 1 millimeter long and 8 micron in diameter. So they are just slightly larger than the red blood cells. So now, since they are just slightly larger, now because of that, there is decrease in the velocity of the blood that is moving through. You can imagine that the RBCs, they are continuously colliding with the blood vessel wall, and their movement is really slow. So that slow movement allows for the exchange of materials with the extracellular fluid. And now if you look at this particular diagram here, so here we have these valves are there. So these are usually called the venous valves. So these venous valves, they allow only flow to one direction. So when there is a blood is being pumped, or let's say there's contraction of the heart, and enough pressure is generated that could lead to the opening of this particular valve. So when this particular valve is open, blood flows through one point to another. So let's say in case of blood being flowing toward, let's say, to the filling of the atria. So here the blood will go towards the heart, and in, let's say, when the filling is over, it will not come back. So in that particular case, the valve will be closed. So usually, if you look at the different architecture, let's say in the calf muscles, there's a typical example. So if you contract those calf muscles, the blood vessels which are inside the calf muscles, they will be contracted. And there's a wave-like contraction going on, which leads to the movement of the blood from one part to the another. Okay, so although in the blood capillaries or the blood vessels, they are tightly packed and the blood is moving from one point to another, but still some water and the fluid in the plasma, they could filter through the walls of the capillary to form interstitial fluid. Now this interstitial fluid, although it is to be returned to the circulatory system, but still there's a small amount of fluid which remains outside, which is called as the lymph. And now that makes up the lymphatic system. So as all of us know that in the blood we have different kind of proteins, different kind of metabolites are present. Now outside there is less. So now because of the presence of these different kind of metabolites or different kind of proteins, there is a pressure being generated which is called as the oncotic pressure. Now this oncotic pressure causes the osmosis of water into the capillaries. So the water which is being lost, it is being brought back by this oncotic pressure into the circulatory system. However, there's a small amount is living, which is constitutes the part of the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system consists of lymphatic capillaries, vessels, lymph nodes, and lymphatic organs. That includes the spleen and the thymus. So I think this is what I wanted to talk about in this particular lecture. So in the next lecture, we'll continue with this particular circulatory system. So thank you very much for your attention.